Hello guys, and welcome back to episode 6 of our series, not the series, on At Lance's Point by Grenza Games. So in this episode, I'm going to go over morale and how we worked that out in the game. It's exceptionally simple. We've done it. A lot of the systems. Sorry, excuse the creaking chair. A lot of the systems in the game are done purely for their simplicity, and this is one of them. So the way morale works in its basic form is a unit will receive morale points, and to test you have to roll above the number of morale points that the unit has received. Can you see that small dice? Should I use a larger dice? Let's use a larger dice for now. We'll use this great one. So if they have 1 morale point, you have to roll 2+, so 1 they would have been a fail and they'd have routed. If there's 2 points, you have to roll 3+, and so on. So you have to roll above the number of morale points that a unit has taken. We have a number of things that happen within that though. So first of all, we have the morale threshold for the unit. And that's dependent on the quality of the unit's morale. Sorry. So, for the most part, Celtic warriors are going to be weak morale. So we have 5 levels: poor, weak, steady, solid, and fearless. And they have, in order of ascension, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 morale points. Sorry, 6. Yeah, morale threshold, not points. Per base. So these guys are weak, so they have a morale threshold of 3 points per base. So the unit has 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18 morale for the unit. Once they have received 18 casualties, they receive their first morale point. And, wrong dice again, let's use that one again. They receive their first morale point. That's the first way of inflicting morale points. Every turn, once per turn, after that, the unit suffers more casualties, they receive another morale point. But in this situation, where it's based on the number of casualties, you can only receive an additional 1 morale point per turn. Poor and weak units have multiple morale thresholds. So a weak unit has 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, and then they also have one at 6 as well. So 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, and 36. So once they've reached 36 casualties, they have an additional morale point. So this simulates like just general loss of troops, and the wearing down of the unit. In addition to that, if a base is killed, we receive an additional morale point. So I'm going to use dice here for multiples of these, I think. So, in our scenario the other day, or in the last video, the cavalry charged in and they killed that base, which inflicts 1 morale point. At the moment that happened, the Celtic player would have had to have rolled, and he'd had to have scored a 1. No, you'd have to have scored a 2 or more to pass the morale test. Quick note, if you roll a 1, if you fail this sort of thing, you actually have 1 reroll per turn that you're allowed to use out of a limited stock of rerolls, but we'll get onto rerolls later. So 2 or more would have passed the test. The threshold for the unit is 18. They've just suffered 8 casualties, so they only have the 1 test, and those cavalry haven't followed up. Shortly after that, that base was killed. So their morale for the second base being lost would have gone up to 2. So the Ionian player would have had to have rolled 3 or more, and I rolled a 4. To pass morale, if the morale is failed, they rout. Then 4 casualties were inflicted on this base, So they so far have lost 16 points, or 16 casualties. Their morale is 18, and they've taken another 4 casualties. So they're now at 20 casualties, which was enough to nudge them up to a 3rd morale point just from the cavalry charge, which would have resulted in would have required a dice roll of 4+ to pass. All of that would have happened, or all of those tests would have been taken as they occurred. So, first base died, test, second base died, test, casualty on that base, test. If you are subject to a brutal melee attack, or even brutal missile attack to be honest, it's possible for a unit to just fold up and run off on the spot. Chances are, with 3 morale points against this unit, when I test, 50-50 chance, yeah, there you go, I rolled a 1, they would have gone. I use a reroll, and I got another 1, they're definitely gone. So the cavalry would have just wrecked that unit completely on the first charge. Other ways you can receive morale. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any elephants here. Most of our armies are at Hughes House and not here. So, unfortunately, I have just the Romans on the table to use. Elephants, though. Elephants inflict terror on a unit when they cause a hit. So, even if they'd only caused 1 casualty against a unit, that unit gets an instant but temporary morale point. That morale point will last to the end of their turn. So in this situation, I do believe there is... It's in here somewhere probably. There is a cataphract card that inflicts terror on an impact. So if we treated these guys as as cataphracts, then the 3 morale that they had done, if they played the card that gave them terror on a charge, would have nudged them up to 4 morale points, and potentially, again, with my rolls, wrecked that unit. The temporary morale point, if they survive the morale for the turn, it goes away at the end of the turn. But you can receive more morale points during a turn, depending on what other things happen to you. There are cards that inflict temporary morale. There are cards that inflict permanent morale points. There is the Waver card, which can be played at any time, in any situation, and adds 1 morale point to an enemy unit. That can be ever so worrying when it's your best unit on the table. Another thing that will affect the unit's morale is if the unit is disordered. So on the charge, the 2 bases at the front were disordered. That wouldn't count to the unit's morale because it's only the 2 bases. If the entire unit is disordered, so if they'd had missile fire against them earlier and the opponent had played disordered by missiles and the unit was disordered, then when it came to their morale test, they'd have had a -1 on their morale test. Again, more chance of them routing. There are also, on the flip side of that, cards that will instantly save a morale situation. With Warband, they have 2 cards. One of them's Heedless of Losses and Strength of Numbers. The Strength of Numbers gives them a +1 on the test for every base that still remains on the unit. And Heedless of Losses, they just ignore the morale result. For the more ordered forces, there is the Tough Nut card and a couple of other cards which are just instant morale passes. You play the card and that's it. And that, guys, is pretty much the morale rules. So yes, thank you for listening for this long. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell button, and I'll see you all in the next video. Cheers, guys. Thank you. Bye.